take two in terms of this news of the week on this Sunday evening. So back in take one, my microphone for whatever reason either didn't capture my voice or I forgot to unmute my microphone. And speaking of which, let me just double check to make sure it's not unmute. Yeah, it's actually capturing right now. And if I later find out that my voice is not captured on the microphone again after I've done this video and look at this in the playback, then yeah, something's gone wrong with either my microphone or my computer that I'm recording this video. But yeah, it's a shame that I have to do this again because I already mentioned this one time back in the first take of news of the week, but I guess it is what it is. I'm gonna have to once again go over in terms of these news that's happened the last couple of days. And usually on a Sunday, and the good news about this news of the week is that, since this is a Sunday one, it's a weekend edition one, there isn't as much news to report as you would see, and I would report back in the middle of the week. So without further ado, let's us begin, and we begin with Chicharito. So you know how back on Wednesday I mentioned that this is the annual report of Chicharito coming to MLS, and that it seemed like for the past couple of years this always happened at least once every year that he's coming to MLS, and it's not going to happen. Well, that might not be the case this year, and that this might be for the first time out of all those rumors that's been talking about Chicharito coming to MLS every single year. This might be the first time ever that Chicharito might be coming to MLS, and that it could actually be a reality because there was a report he will meet with the Galaxy on Monday, and I'm assuming they'll probably talk about some contract negotiation. Now, from what I heard is that they are going to sign him for $10 million, which is a lot of money. And I will say this, I kind of take back of what I said back on Wednesday, where I kind of feel like he's going to be washed up and he's not going to be effective with this team. Not quite. When I think about this signing a little bit more, I feel like in some way it won't be as ineffective as some people would say. I mean, I know some people say, well, he's kind of washed up, and you saw what he has been doing with Sevilla this season and he looked a shell of himself. Well, he can still produce goals, and I think he could definitely produce not the same amount that Zlatan does. I mean, I would be shocked if he can score like 30 goals when he comes to this league. But, he can at least score 10 or 15 goals this season, and I think that should be enough in terms of keeping this Galaxy attack as effective as we have seen in the past couple of years. Although, one thing I will say is that the $10 million price tag that the Galaxy might have to pay for him, that is way too much for a guy that you're probably going to see him score 10 to 15 goals, and that, the only thing I will also say is that, if the Galaxy are going to overpay him, like the Galaxy, they're one of those teams that's known to overpay players and known to spend big money, so this shouldn't be a bit of a surprise. But again, a $10 million price tag on a guy that in a couple of years is probably going to be washed up, and that he's not going to produce a lot on the attack end, and not as much as what Zlatan does, that feels like a way overpriced, and they could have spent that money on something else like their defense. But moving on, in terms of the next news, is that Atlanta United have signed center back Fernando Meza minutes after LGP depart to Cholos was made official. Now, what's interesting about this is that I have a feeling what happened in this deal was that, Fernando Meza, when he was at Necaxa before he come to Atlanta, I have a feeling maybe he actually went to Cholos, and that Cholos either got him on a loan or actually got him on a permanent deal. And then literally minutes after they, of course, decided to get Leandro Gonzalo Perez, they basically sold him to Atlanta United, part of a swap deal. I actually have heard rumor that of course is true, and I have heard rumor that is not going to be the case. But, that's kind of an interesting deal where a team literally lost one of their star center back and they replaced them in a span of a couple of minutes. I mean, I know I said before that I wouldn't be surprised when Atlanta United lose one of their star center back and that they will just replace them in quick succession, but I didn't think that quick succession means that they will do in a span of just a couple of minutes. Like, this has to be the fastest amount of time of a team to be able to replace a player that they lost and then replace him with another guy that they just signed. I mean, talk about continuity with this Atlanta United team. This is really just kick into kind of an overdrive in terms of just their continuity, and that even if they lose one of their star players, they can immediately replace it right away. And Fernando Maza, as I mentioned, I think he's going to be just as decent as LGP, and that I think the difference between him and LGP is that he's going to be a little bit more calm. I mean, LGP, he's been a guy that's known to be a decent defender, but at times he can easily lose his cool, which hence that's why he has had so many yellow cards during his career when he was at Atlanta. I'm not quite sure how many red cards he has received, but there's been many games where he always gets a yellow card, either because he want to start a scuffle or the fact that he just feel like he want to be a hothead and just kind of either disagree with the referee decision and stuff like that. But, you know, hopefully with the fact that Fernando Maza can have a similar quality with LGP, but without the hothead kind of mentality, maybe this will be good for Atlanta, and that they don't have to worry about their star center back could potentially be in thin ice in terms of just picking up a silly yellow card for the rest of the game, but we shall see how it's going to go. NYCFC officially signed Gideon Zelalem, and I think we kind of knew that this deal was going to happen, and that today it was officially announced that this deal is done, because it's been a rumor that he was going to leave SKC to NYCFC, and that it's good for him to go to NYCFC because, you know, he wasn't getting a lot of playing minutes at SKC, and that, as I mentioned before, this is a guy that a couple of years ago was actually rumored to go to Arsenal, and that, you know, his kind of sell on cost and his kind of stock in terms of potentially going to Europe and to develop to be a very decent player has really plummeted, because he hasn't really been playing a lot of minutes with SKC and also had some injury concerns. So hopefully maybe when he go to NYCFC, he gets some change of scenery and maybe get some minutes. I mean, I think NYCFC, the reason why they signed him is because they need some depth in their team. Like, as much as this team is very talented, one of the big issue NYCFC had right now is that they don't really have a lot of depth in their team, and that I just fear if one of their best player is going to go down, they could definitely be in serious trouble. So, you know, because of that, they decide to sign him, and we'll see if Gideon Zelalem is going to get some minute with the team. Like, my only fear is that since now he's joined from a good team to an even better team in NYCFC, maybe he is going to have the same situation where, you know, he wants to have some minutes with the team so he can develop his career, but he's not going to get it because he's going to be a little bit down in the depth chart for NYCFC. Now, LAFC is report to pursuing Ecuador midfielder Jose Cifuentes, and this one is kind of interesting because LAFC looks pretty stacked in terms of the midfield position, but it seemed like they want to get another young South American player. I believe he's only 20 years old, so we'll see if this deal, of course, would happen. And, you know, for LAFC, I think if you want to talk about what is their biggest weakness in this team, and it's actually not hard to, well, it's not easy to find a weakness that this team, because everybody talk about how they are one of the best team in the league and that they're going to compete for MLS Cup, but it's also not hard to find that their biggest weakness that they probably have is the goalkeeping position. Tyler Miller, I believe he's no longer with this team, which means that they leave with Pablo Sasiaga as their starting goalkeeper. And Sasiaga did had some good moment last year when he started with LAFC, but I don't know if he's going to be the answer, and that they need some depth in terms of that position. And also they might think about some depth in terms of the striker position too, which is why there is actually a rumor saying that BWP is report to train with LAFC, and that the team could actually sign him off of free agency. Now, BWP is a guy that, when he got denied of a contract at the Red Bulls, I was kind of a little bit surprised, but at the same time, I feel like eventually they're going to re-sign him for another year after they announced the end of the season roster that did not include him. But it's been a couple of weeks and we're now into January, and the Red Bulls haven't shown any interest of bringing back BWP, and that you just feel like this is probably a situation where BWP time at the Red Bulls is pretty much over, and it's kind of sad that it's over because throughout his MLS career, the only teams that he's been with is the New York Red Bulls, and that he had such a successful career there, and that he's kind of considered a legend at the Red Bulls. So if he's going to be leaving the Red Bulls and joining a new team, which LAFC could be the team that he could be joined, it's kind of sad to see that happen for for Red Bulls fan, but I guess they kind of understand the fact because their team is moving into a new direction, and that this is actually good news for BWP, where I think he still have some gas left in the tank, where he can still be that guy that is one of the most prolific striker in the league, and especially when I mentioned LAFC is a team that needs some depth in terms of the striker position. He could slot very well behind Diego Rossi in that position. I mean, can you imagine Bob Bradley is going to have the option of either taking off Diego Rossi or Carlos Vela in a game, and they bring in BWP as your substitution? Like, that just does not feel fair at all, but that could be a reality if BWP is actually going to side with LAFC. Corey Burke is reported to move to an Austrian Bundesliga club. Now, Corey Burke is a guy that, last season he had a very crazy story where he was supposed to be joining back the Union, but for whatever reason he had some visa issue and he couldn't get back to the United States. And because of that, he kind of got stuck in Jamaica and eventually actually joined on loan with one of the club of his native country. And I thought this year that since maybe he has figured out the whole visa situation, that he can come back to the Philadelphia Union. Well, it seemed like the Union might not actually welcome him back, because it seemed like there is a report that he is actually going to be going to Europe, and that if they, of course, decide to sell him off of Europe and get a profit of that, then that's a great deal for the Union. I mean, I think the Union, even though they lost Corey Burke for the entire season, it didn't really affect them. And in some way, Kasper Schmeichel, who's the current striker and the current goal scorer for this Union team, kind of replaced Corey Burke in that spot, and that I think they're happy to have Schmeichel as that player that's going to be the goal scorer and the striker in favor of Corey Burke. So that's why they decided to move on from Corey Burke, and that, again, I hope they get a profit out of this. If they don't, it's kind of a little bit disappointing that they have to let him go on a free, and that they could have just kept him as a depth piece in terms of the striker position. But we shall see if this report is true and whether or not if the Union is going to get a profit out of this. Nicolas Benezet is reported to head to the Colorado Rapids, and that I think Nicolas Benezet, like Jadino Zelanum, is in a same boat where, this is a guy that is a very talented player, and that they didn't really quite work out with their current team. Benezet, I know he is always known as a guy that scored that equalizer against Atlanta in the Eastern Conference champion, but he hasn't really got a lot of minute and isn't really a guy that was a regular starter for TFC. And you just feel like, he definitely has the talent, but he needs to kind of get some regular minutes, and maybe going to the Colorado Rapids might be the case. And, this isn't just a couple years ago that when you are linked with the Rapids, that means that your career is going to take a nosedive, because whenever you go to the Rapids, that is kind of like a hellhole of a team, and that you are just going to really disintegrate your career there. But with the Rapids, of what they have done recently, and really just have started to build this team to be a big Western Conference competitor, you know, I think with Benazé, if he's going to go to the Rapids, I think that will be a great deal. And he's also going to reunite with his former assistant coach, Robin Fraser. So I think this would be a good kind of trade for TFC to get Nicolas Benazé to the Rapids. And I think he will enjoy it playing with the Rapids rather than just staying for TFC in the long term. Robbie Robinson went number 1 overall in the Super Draft, and yes, I will mention something about the Super Draft, as I mentioned last week that, you know, for people wondering, am I going to talk about the Super Draft? I will mention something about the Super Draft, but don't expect me to do a whole video about it, because I have already explained the Super Draft has already lost its relevance, and that, you know, in past year, I would do a video about the Super Draft, but recently, most of these teams, they don't usually rely on the Super Draft to find talent. I mean, you do still have some hidden gems in the Super Draft, but most of those hidden gems are usually defender, and which is why I think nowadays, a lot of teams, when they go to the Super Draft, they always tend to try to find a defender or a midfield, because those are the players that they can, of course, get them off of a cheap, while they can use all their remaining transfer budget and focus on the attacking end. Now, that's not what Inter Miami decided to do, because Robbie Robinson is a forward, and that I'm going to be interested to see whether or not if he's going to be with the Inter Miami team. I think he's probably going to go to the USL and spend a couple of years there, but we don't know whether or not if he's going to pan out. I mean, when you look at some of the past number 1 draft pick in the Super Draft, most of them doesn't really pan out very well. And for quick mention, the Quakes, in terms of their Super Draft in the first 2 rounds, they got Tanner Beeson and Jack Scaham as the picks that they got for the first 2 rounds. Tanner Beeson, I actually watched him play at Stanford a couple of times, and he was a very decent player, and that I think he could be developed to be a decent player that could be a regular starters for our defense. And it's understandable why the Quakes are picking a defender. Consider, as I mentioned, defender is the area where you can still find some gems in the Super Draft, and the Quakes desperately need some defensive help. Jack Scaham is a winger. I'm assuming he's going to go to Reno 1868, and I wish him the best at Reno 1868 if he does play with that team, because most of the guys that we draft in the Super Draft that goes to Reno 1868, they usually never come back. Like, it is very rare you see a player to go on loan with our affiliates and are coming from the Super Draft, and that we would consider them back and put them in the starting 11. So, you know, I wish him the best if he is going to be going to Reno 1868, but if he's not going to be a guy that's going to be part of the Quakes' future, then I wish him the best of whatever club he is gonna join in the future. MLS team in CCL this season will report to preseason. Well, actually not will report, have report to preseason. They actually report to preseason yesterday, and every other team that is not in CCL is going to be reporting preseason next week. I believe every single team hasn't announced their preseason schedule yet. There's some teams that have announced it, some team hasn't. The Quakes is one of those teams that haven't announced their preseason schedule yet, but I've heard that they are going to go to Cancun once again for their preseason, and they'll probably play against Reno 1868 in a preseason game, because I think the Quakes have this kind of partnership with Reno 1868 where they of course will be playing each other once every year. And since last year that game took place in Reno, this year I believe we're going to be playing against Reno 1868 at Avaya Stadium. So yeah, there you have it. That is pretty much it for the news of the week. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this news of the week and all these news? And as usual, if I miss any important news, let me know in the comments below so I can of course discuss it. But yeah, hope you guys enjoy this video. Hopefully this time you can of course hear my voice loud and clear, although probably will find out once I finish recording this video and do the playback to make sure my microphone is not muted again. But I'm pretty sure it's not muted because I already double checked to see that the microphone is actually on. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.